in an event where the Oracle malfunctions or something funny happens with it, the project would end up pulling incorrect data and possibly, affecting open positions. You could just go in Google where you type in blockchain hacks and you can see actually what numbers we're talking about when we have a blockchain hack and how quick it is to make your way out with millions or billions possibly in value. And if it would be a fault of a badly configured integration, now it's really difficult to explain it as a malicious action of some shady North Korean agency. So the question is, how do we actually, quantify the severity?
Alrighty. Well, hey, thanks so much. It's awesome to spend some time and catch up with you again, Piotr. I think it's been quite some time since we got to chat, but how are you, my friend? And actually, if you don't mind, if you could kind of color the picture or do some quick intro for, hey, who are you? What are you up to? I think that would be awesome for anyone tuning in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, John. It's awesome to talk to you again. It does feel like a lifetime ago, the last time we spoke, but, amazing to have the chance to catch up. So just to remind, I'm Piotr. I'm the Director of Security at Hammond. We are an end-to-end cybersecurity company. And as of now, I'm heading up the enterprise department. So we, basically try and help large enterprises, financial institutions, banks, in general, the legacy TradFi world to, bring them into the blockchain and, help them make their integrations and implementations as secure as it gets. So pretty exciting. Not that many coding errors, not so many, let's say auditing or, hands-on code work, but I'm a bit more into design, into, architecture, into, the bigger picture. Still exciting. So yeah, that's what I've been up to since the last time we had a moment to chat.
Oh man, that is awesome. It is super cool to see, at least from the sidelines, all the great and incredible things that you're doing over at Halborn. And it's funny because I gotta be honest, I come from more of the traditional cybersecurity or endpoint security perspective. And then I know all of we hear all the time that certain vernacular or terminology and lingo when we're chatting about, the MITRE ATT&CK framework or CVEs and CVSS, like the common vulnerability scoring system, how we just sort of discuss or identify, hey, what a vulnerability or potential risk is. But I'm curious because I thought I caught wind of something really cool you all were thinking up. Is there a blockchain vulnerability securing system or security score or BVSS?
So that's actually quite spot on, John. There is indeed one, and there is a reason why there are certain similarities in the name. Because a bit of context on that. So for everyone that's ever read smart contract or a blockchain security review report. There are a couple of sections that you can find in every report. So there's obviously the issue description, perhaps some code locations, maybe a proof of concept if we're lucky. But what we always have is some sort of severity score, right? So just basically that tries and answer how bad this particular finding, this issue is. So there's a very, simple reason why we have that. It's, the devs are quite busy. They have a lot of work, on their plates. And so they need to know what to prioritize, right? And, that's where, color coding, that's where frameworks, that's where numerical scores come in and help us. So the thing about blockchain, it's, obviously, it started in 2008, which is, basically ancient in, technology years, but still as a concept, it's relatively new. Like we only see the adoption from the legacy world, slowly but surely happening now, but it still means it's still very, very new. And, blockchain is all about decentralization, democracy and, free participation or, people all across the world. And that's a great idea. That's a, great concept. It does, however, come with a few challenges. And because all the development is sort of bottom up, there's no, there are no blockchain giants that dictate, the direction of development of, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. Well, yeah, of course you have the foundations, you have, labs, but in principle, it's open source. So like everyone, we can go, right after this call and, commit to the blockchain repository. Now, whether or not it will be accepted by the community, now that's a separate subject, but we can, in principle, do it. However, because there are so many people contributing to one repository, so many people contributing to one branch of knowledge, like everyone has their own ideas. Everyone's ideas are great, are terrific. But the problem is we don't necessarily, speak the same language. I don't even mean, the geographical, linguistic differences. It's, speaking about things, concepts and entities using different words and describing them in a slightly different manner. So this at some point becomes a bottleneck where you can't really progress once you have everyone on the same side. Like everyone who's ever read a legal document, it's like they do understand how important it is to actually know what you're reading. So now if you go back to, an example, smart contract audit security report, what you'll notice 9 times out of 10 is you're going to have this old trusted two-dimensional impact likelihood matrix. So on one axis, you have, how bad it is in terms of, and that's actually a good question, in terms of what? And then you have the likelihood that's, usually scaled from 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. So then again, the question arises, so what does 1 mean? What does 5 mean? Like how, if something that's, rated as 5 on the likelihood scale, is it 5 times more likely to happen than what has 1 on the likelihood scale? Now, there's no easy answer. And I think if you ask the developer, the auditors, they won't be able to give you an answer. The reason is the two-dimensional risk matrix, it's not really scientific. It's like you have apples and oranges, to access, and you try and, do some magic with numbers to arrive at, some weird type of, I don't know, like orange apple juice as a result. It doesn't really, it's not scientific. So on the other side of the spectrum, we have CVSS, which is battle tested, which has been, for ages, probably longer than I live. And, almost everyone, in the traditional cybersecurity space uses it. The slight challenge about CVSS, it's highly technical, and there are very experienced security engineers that still find themselves wondering what metric should mean what connections, what, thought bridges, if you will, you have to make to pick a vulnerability and then apply the standard to it. Because sometimes the connections are so abstract for the reader, and we actually have to explain why it's rated that way. And so this is not that big of an issue in traditional cybersecurity, where reports are in general not made public. They are not a part of documentation of software. Conversely, in blockchain, a lot of the time, especially back in the day, a lot of, companies, blockchain companies, crypto companies went and asked for an audit, for a security review, just to have the stamp of approval from a, respectable name in the industry. And the reason they did it is their community reads the report. And when they see there are no vulnerabilities, or perhaps there are vulnerabilities, but they're all addressed and fixed, means the, project did their homework. They did everything they could to make the project and the funds secure. So here's the reason, I guess is the underlying idea why the BVSS even, began its existence is because CVSS might not be as, friendly to people without technical background, and two-dimensional risk likelihood matrix for anyone that has any, background with mathematics, computer science, or statistics for that matter, that would be, just some spoken mirrors, that there's nothing behind that number. But the community on the other side is, happy to see, super easy to understand charts, because if someone's on the top right corner, that means it's bad. If it's on the bottom left corner, that means it's all right. So we wanted to go and, find, some common ground between these two. And I think we managed to do that. So we came up with the idea of a blockchain vulnerability scoring system that is easy to understand by, non-technical people, while still enabling security professionals and, analysts, business or technical analysts to take the metrics, take the score and, actually do some intelligence on them, group, analyze, take average, whatever you can do in statistics, you can apply it to the standard, because one of the key characteristics is, that we have 2 dimensions on the risk likelihood matrix, whereas in BVSS, we have 12 dimensions. So this on its own does bring way more granularity to the scores. And when you do, some intelligence after you have, 500,000 vulnerabilities scored that way, you can try and, extrapolate and try and answer, questions. What types of vulnerabilities, happen the most often? What types of vulnerabilities are this bad and what types of vulnerabilities are that? So we don't really need to, read through the report, understand tech to know that this project has, very slim chance of being, hacked and all the deposits and yields being withdrawn by the attacker. So, and you can read that from, a couple of letters and numbers in the vector. So it increases efficiency and, and it's like a shy step into bringing some structure and formality into the, otherwise decentralized and distributed world of blockchain.
I mean, I love it. I'm looking, again, from an outsider kind of looking in. I'm not super sharp in that whole blockchain world, but like even all those things, the sort of foundation and like the talking language that we'll use, the vernacular, I think that helps mature that space, I would think. And like as, it grows, I know it's, as you mentioned, still a new space in a certain sense. Well, it's just getting better and stronger at, getting security right. And that's really cool because I know CVSS, without a doubt, organizations and businesses and companies really rely on that just to know what to pay attention to. You have so many vulnerabilities, again, trying to make a list through VDP program, but a couple 1s and 2s, not something that we need to absolutely prioritize, still something we need to get to. But if there's like a 9.8 or a critical on a scale of 10 here, that's something we should probably dig into and work to resolve. So again, really, really cool in my mind to see like, wow, you can so quickly capture the impact and risk and all that in the blockchain side. And I know it is complex, like you mentioned. I think of curl. There was a curl vulnerability or a CVE some time ago that I think had a high CVSS score. But when it finally kind of came to light, the news broke, it was a little bit more obscure. Some heap overflow magic and witchcraft in falling down like a SOX proxy route. So maybe not the most applicable, a little higher attack complexity, but the potential impact could be super duper dangerous. So weird mix of both. And then again, that gets much more technical. But I do like that you mentioned, BVSS is supposed to be so approachable. It's supposed to be a little bit easier to kind of calculate and think this all through. If I may ask, do you have any, quick showcase, quick demos? Can we see this thing in action? What are all the bells and knobs and kind of things we could toggle and switch on for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I had in mind an example I would love to, walk you through. So what I would like to do is to show a report that, Hammond published recently. And, that's an actual vulnerability that we found in an actual project that's fortunately fixed now and didn't make into production. So, we used BVSS in-house to score our vulnerabilities and to communicate the scores to clients. So, and by the way, like everything that I'm going to show, it's, available publicly. So the calculators, the reports, so feel free to go and check them out. Okay. So, for the purposes of, showing, BVSS in action, and, how you can, what's it for? Let's have a look at an example vulnerability. So this one here, that's from an actual report, from a review of an actual project. So in a nutshell, what the vulnerability is all about, in blockchain, which is, and you could think of it as an isolated network that can't really talk to, the outside world, we would at times like to get data from the outside world. So, think about, say, some asset prices, right? Like random numbers, the latest football scores, like what have you, what, like in general data that, does not originate on blockchain, but is needed on blockchain for, reasons, right? So we have this concept of oracles in blockchain, and, it sounds really cryptic, but what they do is quite simple. They just feed this real world data into the blockchain. They are well known. They are trusted. The T word, kind of frowned upon in blockchain, but for some reason, everyone accepts and is cool with oracles. So that's what they do. And literally thousands of projects rely on different type of oracle and data feed providers. So this here is an issue that we found in an integration with Chainlink. Chainlink is one of the largest oracle companies out there. And so when you think of, getting some information, getting some data, you typically want to, know the information, but you also want to know some information about this information. So metadata, right? So if you think about, say file in Linux, you obviously have the file itself that's either a binary blob or a text file, but what it also has, it has permissions, it has, create date, it has last modification date, it has owner, it has loads of things that you don't really see when you open this file. And with those things, all cybersecurity professionals, they just know how important they are, and they are equally important in blockchain. So, when you think of someone you telling a price of, say, Bitcoin, they're going to say, okay, so it costs $30,000. So it's some information, right? But what you lack is, when was this price reported? Because if they tell you it costs $30,000 today, well, that's not actually correct, because it's, say 25% more, give or take. And so in every price should come with at least the timestamp at which it was generated or at which it was reported, because otherwise you may find yourself in a situation where you're relying on outdated information. And in trading, you have this concept of liquidation. That's basically an opportunity for the exchange to come in and basically sell off your assets if their value drops below a certain threshold. And if an integration with an oracle is implemented incorrectly, you may, be at risk of being liquidated without an actual reason to be liquidated. Because say if your order depends on Bitcoin being, at $40,000 and the oracle reports $30,000, now that's quite a huge gap. And usually tolerance is set, around say 0.1%, definitely not 25%, like in this case. So, this price data that would be extremely accurate a couple of weeks back, like it's worthless as of today. So that's the vulnerability right here. This function that was fetching prices from the oracle failed to check the timestamp when the price was reported. And so in an event where the price, the oracle malfunctions or something funny happens with it, the project would end up pulling incorrect data and possibly, affecting open positions. And let's keep in mind, these are actual people with actual money, sometimes investing really non-trivial sums. And you can just, go the first page in Google where you type in blockchain hacks, and you can see actually what numbers we're talking about when we have a blockchain hack and how quick it is to, make your way out with millions or billions possibly in value. And, if it would be a fault of a, badly configured integration, now it's really difficult to, explain it as a malicious action of some shady North Korean APT group. That's just, it's like you could almost say it's a bug in configuration. So the question is, how do we actually, quantify the severity? It says median here, it says 50, but ideally you would like to know, where all this, where all these magic numbers are coming from. Everyone that's ever done any software development, everyone should hate rightfully magic numbers. And so I can promise these are, like there's no magic in there. They're there are formulas, and I would like to go and calculate the scores. So for the purposes of this example, I'm going to show the vector here. So this is the all those, all this code. It actually does mean something. And, when you add and subtract and multiply and divide, I guess, cut at the threshold, you arrive at this number. So how to arrive at this number, that's what I would like to show. So keep in mind, the vulnerability is about a respectable company, malfunctioning. A respectable company, I mean the Oracle chaining in this example. And if that happens, a lot of funds may be impacted. So knowing all this, from reading the report, let's go and calculate the score. So you can calculate the score on halborn.com, and I can show the calculator right now. So in BVSS, we have 12 different metrics, and every one of which describes a certain parameter of the vulnerability. So we have two main, I would say, classes. One is exploitability, the other is impact. So we can draw some parallels between the two-dimensional risk likelihood matrix, but they are obviously a bit more granular and go into a bit more detail than the risk matrix that, is sort of okay with just having two metrics. But we can then further scale the metrics by coefficients, because one thing to keep in mind is impact of a successful attack in blockchain is quite different to an impact of let's just say might be quite different to an impact of an attack in, traditional cybersecurity. Because let's just say, imagine some company is, hit by ransomware, right? So what happens? Storage is encrypted, probably lost. Maybe, the attackers managed to extract and export some data. But ultimately, obviously, as bad as it is, you can go and buy new equipment. You can try and recover your data. And it's not like someone steals your data. You're no longer John Hammond. You're still John Hammond. It's just someone, knows you a bit better. Now, when we talk about blockchain and we have a hack, now someone can get access to, my money and in split second just, I guess, drain my entire wallet. And there's no going back. I can't go and, sort of press the rewind button or, buy more computing power on AWS or, try and find out my old thumb drive to recover my, engineering thesis. I can't do any of that because the funds, as far as cryptography and maths is concerned, rightfully belong to an attacker. So kind of Wild West here, but it is what it is. And so that's the difference. So, finishing with this digression, coming back to the metrics, right? So let's kick off with exploitability. So basically what exploitability is, it will try and answer the question how likely it is to be a victim of such an attack. So all these are, we can obviously hover over and, try and get some tips for that we prepared for you when you try and arrive at the score. So, starting with attack origin, this basically tells you who triggers the vulnerability. So in this case, it can be anyone, right? Because anyone that uses the project depends on the Oracle. So the Oracle is feeding the data regardless of who sends the transaction. So arbitrary means basically any account can trigger the box. That's correct. Now going into attack cost. The attack cost is something that tells you how expensive this attack is to conduct by the attacker. And because, it's quite difficult to arrive at an absolute number, what expensive actually means, we relate it to a cost of a single transaction on the relevant blockchain. So in here, the cost is it's peanuts because there's no cost at all. You just send the transaction and it can be any transaction. The point is, it's just one transaction. So cost of the attack, maybe, if the network is congested, say $20. That's really not too much if, millions are on the line. So the attack cost stays up low. And now, remembering that for this bug to be a problem, a respectable and, legitimate company must be at a time of turmoil, must, do something really, really badly. So the chances of that happening are not necessarily that high, right? Businesses rather tend to operate, normally, and there's a reason why we call disasters and emergencies, because they don't really happen that often, fortunately. So still, that is something that can happen. It is a possibility still. And, we've seen, especially last year, that, companies that were thought to be too big to fail, they failed anyway. So I think, the engineer that was creating that particular vulnerability decided that the complexity should be high because apparently J-Link is, too big to fail. So let's switch to high now. So moving on to impact metrics that try and answer the question, what and how badly what is affected. So we start with well-known and battle-tested CIA triad. And in this example, this confidentiality is not really affected because the project is public, all data is public, and so no data gets disclosed in a malicious way. And so there's no impact to confidentiality. There is also no impact to availability either because the platform is still operational. It still works. Everyone can still use it. It's just the outcome may not be what they're expecting. Still not availability. So it stays at none. However, now we get to the point where things get a bit more interesting. So let's assume for a second that the prices are saved somewhere, ratios, realized, losses, unrealized profits. It's all stored somewhere. And because prices are changing and they are changing in a malicious way, this data that's going to be saved in the contract, it's going to be corrupted. And that means that integrity is affected because integrity is all about basically write operations. So we can think of availability as read and integrity as write. And because we're writing here, we can still read. So the availability stays at none. What we're writing, though, not necessarily what we should be writing. So integrity is as critical, and why it's critical, we can see here because most of core data and most users are affected. I think we can agree if we're dealing with a financial application, I would say price data is quite core to the operation. So because all price data is affected, all users are affected, it's implicit that deposits and yields will be also affected in a critical way. So these are the impact metrics. So we can now see that this vulnerability, there must be certain, however unlikely conditions satisfied for this to happen. But if it indeed happens, it's going to be really, really, really bad. And, funds will be at stake and there's a chance of people losing their life savings and more than that. So we get to the last class here, which are coefficients. So the goal of coefficients is to scale the score, considering the environment of the project of the affected protocol. So starting with reversibility, that's quite self-descriptive. So it tells whether or not we are able to reverse the effect of the vulnerability, because we can patch that for sure. But coming back to what we discussed earlier, once someone gets a hold of your funds, they won't let go because rightfully, as funny as it sounds, there's the funds belong to the attacker. So if someone gets liquidated, if someone, gets a higher price, someone gets a lower price, doesn't matter. You can't reverse that because the transaction happened. The exchange happened too. Now, I sold you, snake oil for $1 million, even though you didn't expect it. That's what happened. And, you have your jar of snake oil and I have $1 million and you should be upset about that. But as far as blockchain is concerned, everything was, by the book. So there's no reversibility. We can't do anything about it. And then we have the scope. Scope tells us whether or not this vulnerability affects some other project, some other systems outside of the system that's directly affected by the vulnerability. Fortunately, that was not the case here. And this vulnerability is contained within this one project. So scope stays as none. And we arrive at the final score of 495. The reason we had 5 in the report. Is just our software runs a score up. But this is essentially this rating. And I think it's quite accurate if we think about it, because, something's really bad, but, something quite uncommon must happen for this to be an actual problem. So my advice to the developers would be, that's not something that, that you have to fix immediately. It's not that you have to drop everything that you're doing now and, get on fixing it. But let's not put it in the backlog. Let's, acknowledge this as a distinct possibility. We all know that things that shouldn't have happened, like ever, they happened in the last 2 years. It's been a very eventful, second decade of the 21st century. So, what we thought was impossible previously is definitely possible now. So my advice would be, treat it as a medium right into the middle of the backlog. And then if your project manager comes and sees the score, you'll be able to explain what it actually means. We have A::A. Well, that's nothing else but attack origin arbitrary. We have A::N. That means availability none, deposit critical, integrity critical, yield critical too. So that's what you can read. And this is inspired by CVSS, because this is a format very friendly to any intelligent software there is. So the calculator is live. It's hardware.com. Let me see, /BVSS. You'll be able to find the URL in the comments, or, if we try and share it. Also, the report is public too. So we'll share the report as well. Feel free, have a look, play around, and, hopefully you'll find it useful.
Well, hey, this is really, really cool. And it's awesome to see it in action. I would think this would be phenomenal for just other, even threat modeling, or still trying to get enough context on different vulnerabilities or risks. Can I ask, is that something that you tend to do personally? Do you ever have to diagnose, okay, we see this new flaw, let's run this through the calculator and get a number and get some score attached to it? Are there other members of your team? Is it other auditors or engineers? Or is this frequent, and is this kind of the new norm? Do we just readily encourage, everything you find, just stitch it up with the calculator?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The boring thing, but also a beautiful thing about standards is, you finally get to speak the same language. People that come from different backgrounds, have different biases. Finally, they have a tool that brings them all together, how, utopian it sounds. But it does help a lot, because as many auditors there are, as many opinions and biases there is about, how to rate a particular vulnerability. And, you can say, oh, it's the medium. But, the next question after that should be, why do you think that's a medium? And well, there you go. Here's the framework. Here's the numbers. And that's why we're using it in our day-to-day work. Like every vulnerability that's identified by Halborn gets assigned a numerical score. We have a database to which we can refer to, find a rating or get some, inspiration how to score an issue. Because everyone that's ever used CVSS, I bet they had to consult a more senior colleague how to apply the standard to the vulnerability. So this is the exercise that we're, continuously going through. And it did help, standardize a lot of findings that we've been reporting frequently. Like, for example, the Oracle issue that we just examined. That's quite unfortunate. That's quite a common bug. And, as many people you have, you can go to your favorite bug bounty platform, check out public reports by, all the many security companies there are, including us. And, you can see that the same issue might get different ratings across different companies, across different auditors within one company for that matter. So our goal was, to help the space grow up a bit, if you will, mature. And there's always some structure and, formality that's associated, that's directly proportional actually to the maturity of a technology or of an industry. So this is our contribution. The standard's definitely not finished. It's a live project. So we keep, adapting it, and we monitor how the metrics, like whether they still make sense, whether we should change the weight of a particular metric because it doesn't seem to be that prevalent in the space anymore. Like if you go to crack.news, you'll notice that 20% of all attacks in between 2020 and 2022 were because some key cryptographic key was compromised. So that's what our standard reflects. If there's a compromise of a key, that means there must be a specific attack origin. So there's a reason why, there's 0.2 weight on specific attack origin and, 0.8 on and 1 on arbitrary, because it is less likely for one person or even 50 people to lose their keys than, use any key in existence. And there can be a lot of keys thanks to the magic of cryptography.
Well, hey, my friend, I think it is a incredible and awesome and fantastic thing. I know, as you mentioned, look, it's trying to move the needle and make a difference and kind of, hey, take a step in the right direction to mature and help the space grow and be professional in hey, locking down security and taking security seriously. So my hat's off to you all. I think a huge kudos and applause for that great work. And I'm excited to see what's next. Is there, I don't know, an attack framework equivalent for the blockchain security space? Is there more to build out? But hey, I suppose time will tell. I think BVSS as it is an awesome kind of big step forward. So thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you so much, John. Super exciting. It was super exciting talking to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, like if you ever find BVSS, useful, we're on the lookout for feedback. So, like any feedback is good. And, we'll be more than happy to, include it in our, research and development to the standard.
What's the best way, if I may ask? Hey, reach out, contact. Is there a good line for feedback, or hey, just kind of using it and showcasing, speaking up with Halborn?
You can shoot us just a message on Twitter, Telegram, LinkedIn. Go visit our website, halborn.com, wherever. We'll definitely, get back to you, and because it's just precious to us. I mean, what good a standard is if it turns out not to be applicable at all. It's the theory versus practice, right? So we start with theory, now we're putting it into practice, but we want to make it better. And if it turns out that we need BVSS version 58, I'm down for it, because it only means that the previous 57 versions were an iteration of improvement over the previous one. So more than happy to go and bash it, go and compliment it. All feedback.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Piotr. This has been phenomenal, and we'll catch up again sometime soon.
Thank you so much, John. Great talking to you, and hope to see you soon.